I would probably take an average 1-2 grinder playing his A game over an average 25-50 grinder playing his C game any day.
You're listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. Each week, you'll get to peek inside the greatest minds in the game and discover what makes them successful.
Mental toughness separates those that can't handle the stress.
If you're going to treat it like an amateur, you're probably going to have amateur results.
Now here's your host, Elliot Rowe.
Hey, Elliot Rowe here. I'm very excited to announce that for the next few episodes, Stephen Baker will be guest hosting the show. Stephen has experience both as a professional poker player, strategic coach, and now a member of my mindset performance coaching world. I can confidently say that Stephen's one of the world's leading experts in poker mindset and performance, and I'm really excited to hear the conversations he has with some fantastic guests. And with that, here's Stephen.
My guest on today's podcast is Rory Young. Rory's a high-stakes cash game player who also has some significant tournament scores to his name. He's also well known for some high-profile prop bets. Behind that is an extremely serious professional, both as a poker player and also as a developer of some high-value poker software. We'll be discussing his career in both of those fields and the mindset lessons that he's learned from both. So let's get straight to it and get a look inside Rory's mind and the insights he can share with us. Well, Rory, firstly, great to see you. Thank you for coming. And let's just start by sharing with everybody how you first got into poker. Let's just talk about those early days when you first got into the game. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started like a lot of other poker players in university. I was studying journalism, falling asleep in the back of classrooms, and started playing online poker to kind of cure my boredom while I was studying. I fell in love with the game pretty quickly. I finally found the thing that I loved and I could pursue as a career. So I started kind of going into the casino and playing like 1-2 live cash. And like I was terrible at first, but like I could see that it's something I could constantly improve at. And then I met a couple of people in the Sydney like live cash scene. And I realized, okay, I can make a career out of this. From there, it was just about really meeting the people who were 2, 3, 5 years ahead of me in terms of where I wanted to be, and then learning as much from those people as possible. Yes, so I think I started playing pub poker and small stakes at the casino, but quickly kind of became familiar with the online scene and then started playing bigger live tournaments, bigger live cash, and then started traveling internationally pretty quickly, and then was playing scoops, W coops, and the kind of live tournament circuit for a while before transitioning to full-time cash. And that kind of landed me to be living in Las Vegas. I moved there about 4 years ago. That was one of the most significant shifts in my career. I'd always pictured, 25, 50, 50, 100 live cash at Bellagio as like, oh, this is like the pinnacle, like the best players will be playing here. And I kind of went in one day just like looking to play and see what the games were like. And I saw a couple of like, the big names that I'd seen on these big live cash shows, kind of nervous to play against them. And I don't know, like shots fired, but like they were pretty horrendous compared to the competition I'd faced online. So it was a big turning point. It was like 20 minutes of playing where I'm like, oh wow, this is a gold mine. Then it was just every day I was, the first one there and the last one to leave for like 3 years straight. And that was my main focus.
Yeah. So you've a couple of interesting points I'd like to pick up on there. So you described improving. What was your main method of improvement in those early years?
Just being a sponge for information. So it was always like my goal, whether it was conscious or subconscious, was to find the people who were much better than me and not look to like emulate their strategies, but understand their strategies and look to put my spin on it and implement them. a couple of people who were instrumental in that. I mean, the most instrumental was, and the biggest kind of turning point in my career was meeting my best friend, Adrian Attenborough. He showed me like how to be an actual professional at the game and treat it like a very serious job. So there was, I mean, he's kind of maniacal when it comes to his studying processes and stuff, and I'm nowhere near that. But I learned from him like how to approach the game on a scientific and fundamental level, and we kind of got in on the very early stages of using solvers like PO Solver, back when there was this big debate about like, oh, are solvers the best way to play? And it's just like, now it's a foregone conclusion. There's no debate. So yeah, we got in pretty early there, and yeah, it was just rigorous hard work for a short while, but also understanding that not to just accept things as they are, and to challenge and create new strategies.
Yeah, I see. No, well, that's really That's a really helpful insight to the mindset of a professional. I mean, this is the Mindset Advantage podcast, and I just want you to maybe share with everybody who's watching and listening, what were the biggest mindset challenges? And I'm not talking now about the technical learning curve, but I'm talking about the pure mental game. Was there a particular point in your professional career where you realized mindset, the ability to execute at the level of your technical skills, was a challenge? Share with us any insights, any challenges you faced along the road.
No, I was a Zen master from day one. Nah, just kidding. I was a crazy person. I had to keep like 2 spare new mouses on hand, not just 1 spare mouse, but 2 spare mice, because I would slam my mouse down, shatter it. I've broken laptops, I've broken screens, TVs. I was
right.
I was clinically insane. And then it kind of got to a point where I'm like, why am I doing this? This is crazy. And I'm not sure how I first came across Elliot, but I've been working with Elliot Rowe for 8 years or so. And once I started working with him, I started realizing I wasn't performing how I see the ideal version of me performing. And it was just about adjusting the way I kind of think through things and approach and prepare and all of that in a way that was in line with how I would see the ideal version of me doing that. I guess like some early things that I learned from him was making sure I'm in like a calm and present state of mind before starting a session, not letting the external things that were worrying me throughout the day into my session. And just like, okay, because all of those things will kind of infiltrate the way you play the game. So it's like if you lose a big hand, then that will trigger you to do certain things. But it's not looking at really, okay, it's not looking at it from like a stop the crazy bluffs that you do when you're on tilt. It's looking and understanding why you go on tilt. So it's like an example would be, okay, I lost a huge pot and then I get this feeling in my chest, for example. And that feeling is, okay, shit, if I don't cash this tournament, then my bankroll will be less. And that means I will be a failure. In my example, it's the fear of failure, that kind of, that's my kind of fundamental issue. And all of this stuff comes back to these like fundamental issues that you have kind of deep in your psyche. So it's about understanding them. And once you understand them, you're aware of them and you can highlight them in the moment rather than just be overwhelmed by emotion.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. There's 2 issues there, aren't there? I mean, you've highlighted that fear of failure, but also there's that sense of urgency that everything rests on this moment, but it really isn't like that. I mean, poker is a long-term game, and the success or otherwise of your career will not be defined on any one day. It is the cumulative effort over a long period of time, but there is a mental program, which sometimes it's so common in poker players that it drives them to put a huge amount on that day, that tournament. and they sort of catastrophize when it doesn't go well.
Especially with like tournament poker, it is true that like your career is kind of defined by these career defining moments, right? It's like you don't make many big final tables. Like I can, even in my kind of live tournament career, like I'm probably down money in live tournaments. It hasn't like been like a big success in the live realm. And it's like, you know, you look at 2 or 3 final tables, and like if you made a big mistake deep in those, like that can be the difference between, you know, plus $2 million and minus 25,000. So it's like it's hard to reconcile. But I think one of the main things I've learned is not putting too much pressure on yourself. Like I think putting the right amount of pressure, because you can't just be this blasé person who's just like, oh, you know, what happens? You know, it just doesn't. At least for me, it doesn't work. Like I need some kind of pressure there, but not putting like the pressure of like, oh, you're an absolute failure if you don't do X, Y, Z. I think it's a balance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. By the way, what you've just said, I mean, it is actually supported by the sort of the psychology and the science of high performance states, specifically flow states. What's known is that these feelings of a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of nervousness is actually a good thing. It's actually a necessary gateway to get into a flow state. And if you don't feel it, there's probably something which is wrong in terms of achieving a high performance state. So you shouldn't be, it is difficult. There is this balance. You don't want to be too chilled. You certainly don't want to be over anxious, but you need to feel a little bit of that, what you might describe as excitement, but may otherwise be interpreted as nerves. So yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like that, you know, once you started having performance coaching, you definitely felt like you were moving in the right direction in a quite pronounced fashion. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. It was just something I'd completely neglected. And then once I started treating it, but because I mean, as you know, the physical part of poker is like important, but it's not like the most important by any means. I think it's I think you're able to have like a long and very successful career by, you know, sitting at your desk and drinking Mountain Dew and eating pizza. Like I know that Elliot will probably kill me by saying that, but I think like the physical stuff is a much smaller aspect. If you can kind of master that or get close to mastering the mental side of it, I think it's like way more important. But obviously, like everything combined is ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another thing I've observed is, I mean, as players become more advanced, it becomes harder and harder for them to gain those technical upgrades. Of course, it's important always to be looking for the technical upgrades, but you reach a certain point where you know the game tree pretty damn well, and to get the extra 1% is hard. But you're right, so many players neglect the fact that they have mental game blockages, which mean that even if they're at, let's say, a 90 out of 100 if notional technical game, they often perform at 70 or 60 or worse because of their mental game blockages. Whereas they'll actually study really hard to get that extra percentage, and they'll neglect the 10, 20, 30% they're losing through the mental game leaks. Is that something you've observed?
100%, and I don't think it's because they're lazy or like ill-informed. I think it comes down to being able to measure it, right? It's like it's not difficult to measure your skill level in poker, whereas it's quite difficult to measure your ability to, you know, process your emotions and everything like that. So I think it comes down to that, and then also like, I mean, I started doing this back in the day when, like, you know, someone said hypnotism and you just get laughed at, right? Now we're in a stage where it's not only becoming more mainstream, but it's like it's verified science. So I think something that helped me back then was just being open, and that's something that's been really helpful to me in my life, is just being open to new ideas. So yeah, I think I've put a lot of people onto this kind of stuff. And just being like, hey, look, you know me, I'm very apprehensive and a bit cynical about some stuff. Just give it a shot and see what it does for you. yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for anybody who's listening, if you want to get a little bit more into the science of hypnotherapy, there's some great work out there by Dr. David Spiegel, who's a psychiatrist, a practicing MD, as well as an academic at Stanford University. And they did a very detailed, sustained study on this. And they observed changes at a neural level using scanning techniques. And he, obviously as a psychiatrist, is somebody who can prescribe drugs. He's got all the tools available in terms of dealing with any mental issue. And his chosen resource, which he uses first of all, is hypnotherapy. So anybody wanting to look into the science of this, and just to back up what you've just said, Rory, it's out there, in terms of the verifiable scientific evidence. I just wanted to come back to Adrian, actually. You mentioned Adrian Attenborough. He's a good friend of yours, very good friend of yours. And you were in a great position to see right up close his run to that second place in the World Series main event. And I know you had some insights about the mental side of the game, having seen that run close up. And I was wondering if you could share those with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been living in Vegas with Adrian for the last 4 years, playing live cash. He was always playing alongside me, and he made a run in this World Series main event. I was there railing from day 5 onwards. It was a pretty crazy period. There were some days they played until 9 a.m. one day. So it was an insane, long, exhausting kind of process. When he made the final table, I called Elliot. I'm like, hey, we got to get you in to do some kind of last minute work with Adrian to get him ready. I wasn't privy to those sessions, but I think one of the main things for Adrian was like focusing on not focusing on the moment too much, and just focusing on what the task at hand was. So I think one of the traps that people fall into when they make a deep run is say they get a big chip stack with 20 people left. They are now in preservation mode. They're trying to preserve their chips in order to like not lose. So they're kind of operating from a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset. Whether I don't know if Elliot gave him this mindset or if this was like how he was approaching it before, but like he had this idea in his mind of, okay, I need to win every chip in this tournament to win the tournament. How do I win those chips? It's not sitting back after I win a big pot. It's putting my foot on the gas 100% of the time. So that's something that allowed him to basically tune everything out, tune the cameras out, tune the pressure out. It was just, how do I amass these chips? And it sounds simple, but like I've never been able to do something like that in my deep runs. Like it's difficult to do. So yeah, that was I think the main advantage he had when it comes to like mindset. Yeah, I mean he was deathly ill. I don't think anyone knows this. He was coming into the final table. He couldn't even get out of bed that morning. And Elliot did a session with him while he was still in bed, and just tried to put him in a frame of mind where he was, not only able to get out of bed, but go out and make, very complex decisions. So I don't know what happened in that session. Maybe there was some magic, maybe I don't know. But yeah, he was able to come in and do pretty well.
Yeah, and certainly looking at his performance, nobody would guess that was the case, which is testament to just quite how good his mindset was. Of all the times to be sick, that's definitely right up there as one you don't want. So, absolutely massive credit to him and the work he did there. So now, Rory, I'd like to just talk about something else you've done to an extremely high level. You created a software company, and you created the Odin software, and you've also now created a new app, which I've tried out and been hugely impressed by, Battle. Let's just firstly talk about, what it was that led you into creating poker software. And I'm also really interested in whether you've had any mindset issues and if you've observed any crossovers with the lessons you learned in terms of mindset as a poker player, and also what you're doing now in terms of developing a company?
Yes. So like the reason why I started doing this software stuff. So I haven't really played any poker for the last 2.5 years. I was, as I said, the first one at Bellagio, the last one to leave, pretty much every day for like 3 years straight. That takes a huge toll on your body and your mind. And to me, at least in my life, the primary kind of goal or like calling is kind of having children and raising them. So as I was kind of approaching 30, I was like looking at my life and my income streams, and I realized that I am trading my time for money 100% of the time. There's no ability to scale your poker skills outside of like coaching and like, well, coaching is still trading your time, but outside of like, running a big stable. But I mean, all of those pretty much fail. I think if you look at all of the big stables, that they fail. So in terms of like income streams that don't require you to trade one for one, there's just no options. So it's something I've known from a young age that I would always go into business, but I was waiting for something that really piqued my interest or my passion to start a business with. So the basic idea of Odin was to bring PO solver type learning strategies to everybody. There was a big, because the developers of these platforms are also the business owners. The UI, the usability and stuff is pretty primitive. So the idea for that was just bringing the same tools that I learned to get better at poker to the masses via like a browsable online format. And then once I'd started Odin, I'd kind of like not figured out, but I had some experience in how to run a software company, how to sell it, how to run a business, and then teamed up with some world-class AI developers to create our own solvers. So we made we did our own version of PO Solver, our own version of Monka Solver, all of these different solvers. So we have the technology in-house, and then leverage these technologies into like consumer products. So Battle, the new one, it's fully mobile-based, and it's all about gamified learning. So you'll be playing on there, it looks like you're playing on, say, GG Poker or something like this, but you're getting feedback in real time. And then you're able to like analyze your decisions and see where you're going wrong, and do things like challenge your friends and and there's some pretty cool stuff. You can kind of play in challenges against people and then win entry to like World Series tournaments and stuff. It's been a pretty long journey, but I'm excited for what we're bringing.
So I just wanted you to tell us a bit more about Battle. I can say I've actually used it, and I think it's an awesome tool. I think it actually really ticks the box of high-level analysis, but actual usability on a mobile app. And I think that there's nothing I've come across up to this point which actually ticks those boxes on a mobile app. I mean, it's something I could actually and have used, at train stations, airports, waiting rooms, but feel like I'm genuinely learning. Tell us a little bit more about Battle. What is it, and what do you see it as bringing new to the poker software field?
Yeah, so with things like Odin and these other kind of tools, I noticed that while it gave users the ability to kind of study like the pros, it was still just boring. Like no one really wants to study. They study so they can get better. So the main kind of focus for Battle was making learning fun and like kind of disguising the learning with just like fun playability. So at its core, it's a game, but you're also kind of learning while you play. So we wanted to make it as fun as playing on GG Poker or something like that, but with like instant feedback and detailed analysis, like if you want it. So that was kind of the main focus.
No, that's awesome. And for anybody listening and watching, there are links to both Odin and Battle in the show notes. So certainly go and give it a try, because I can tell you from experience and from somebody who's also played professionally, but now enjoys playing poker recreationally, it's great. Particularly Battle. I'm going to absolutely go all in on that one, because it is just fun, but you genuinely feel like you're learning in a way which just honestly for me has not been true of any other mobile application. Okay, so Rory, if you were now to reflect on all of the experience you've accumulated in your career, and you were to give advice to somebody at an early stage or maybe still building their poker career, what would you say to them regarding the mindset and performance side of the game? What would you advise them to do, which maybe you wish you'd done at an earlier stage, looking back on your own career?
Yeah, a few things. So firstly, I would say use the blueprint of finding people who are where you want to be in, say, 2 to 3 years, and learning as much from them as you can. The key component in that is, how do I bring value to this person's life so they are able to add value to my life? So I think like that's quite important. You can do it other ways, but like that's a shortcut to learning valuable information. Like it's basically learning from other people's mistakes. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I would just get very in tune with what are your goals, write them down, and then from first principles, figure out how do I most quickly achieve these goals. Part of that is understanding like what's my motivation for achieving these goals, and don't be scared if the motivations are vapid, like, okay, I want to make more money, but go like a little bit deeper and be like, okay, why do I want to make more money? So do I want to make more money so I don't have to work when I have kids, or I want to make more money so I can get girls, or like, it doesn't have to fit any mold. Just be very honest with yourself about why you want to achieve certain things, because through this process, you might realize that your goals are centered around just appeasing other people. So really make sure that you know why you're doing certain things, because this will help you prevent these periods of like feeling, I guess, like unmotivated. Like you need to understand your core driver. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is like, just from a personal level, I've kind of struggled with like drug and alcohol addiction for my whole adult life, or even my childhood. I would say if you're struggling with anything in that realm, be honest with yourself and really look at it as a life or death situation. Like there are people who die every day from like a variety of these kind of overdoses or just like general degradation of the body. If you're struggling with anything like that, just know that there's not this taboo anymore. I think like that's been something that has been like a remarkable improvement in my life once I really took stock and was honest with myself. Just taking that incredibly seriously, because it's just impossible to operate at a high level when you're on these kind of substances. And you might think that you are, because like your results are doing well and stuff, but like, I would say, take a hard look. You're not alone in this. A lot of poker players like suffer with this kind of stuff, and reach out for help where you can.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for being so open about that. I think some hugely valuable points in there, by the way. I mean, this thing about having a real sense of purpose is so important. I come across it all the time. And I know, Elliot does this work with clients. I do this work with clients in actually trying to identify what your core drivers are, because if you don't really have a sense of what my vision is, and that sounds a little bit woo-woo, but actually if you don't have a real sense of purpose, it really becomes hard to do the everyday things which are tough, getting down to studying again, grinding yet another session, and even just setting yourself one of those process goals, a good goal of, okay, I'm going to study this many hours or play this many sessions. At some point, if you don't really know why you're doing it, you will hit a wall in terms of willpower. So actually really understanding, it's fine, as you say, to say, well, I want to do it to be rich, to, attract a partner, or to just have a comfortable family life. There's nothing wrong with that. These are legitimate motivators, but having that sense of clarity is far better than just having a vague sense that I should be doing something for whatever reason. And as you say, yes, I mean, you've proven a huge success, but in doing that, you've overcome, you've identified a very real performance and life blockage, and you managed to tackle that successfully. And I think, thank you for being open about that. And thank you really for being an inspiration to many people. I hope people who are listening to that actually, say, wait a minute, it can be done if you take these issues seriously and take your performance seriously.
I had a follow up to the last point that I think is pretty valuable to listeners. The common characteristic of every large, very successful poker player is not dedication, it's not hard work, it's not intelligence, it's resilience.
Yes.
And being able to, there are so many, guys who could have been talented poker players, but when they first went broke, they were like, okay, this is not for me. And they quit, right? It's the guys who have this undying, just motivation to kind of achieve it. So I think that's definitely something that I would try and harness if I was someone starting out in poker, really preparing for those moments of self-doubt, really preparing for those moments of despair, because you're going to have them. The best players in the world have them all the time. And I would just really try and lock in and make sure that you're prepared for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that very point is one I actively work on with clients, developing that mindset. And I think a lot of people think it's the kind of mindset you're born with or you're not, but you can consciously cultivate it. I don't know, you've probably heard of a guy called Jocko Willink, and he does a podcast, and he used to be a US Navy SEAL, and they had this phrase which he's kind of popularized, this idea of saying good. When something goes wrong, you say good. And it's this idea of radically accepting the difficult moments and saying, okay, how can I become better in that moment? And I definitely observe, working with clients in poker and across other industries, that the very best actually develop and actually work on that mindset, prepare themselves for the difficult moments, and actually say, hey, this is my chance to be even better. I mean, one really great example of this is a guy called Steve Redgrave. You may remember him. He was an Olympic rower. He's such a brutal sport, and he was in it for 20 years. He ended up rowing in his 40s and I think winning a gold medal. And I always remember listening to an interview with him, and somebody was asking him about the pain of those final 500 meters of a rowing race, and he said, I love it, because I'm feeling the pain, but I know I can cope with the pain better than anybody else. And that is the kind of mindset, when we're in a downswing, how you cope with that will define you far more than when things are going well, because we will all hit that downswing, and how we cope with it is going to be, a chance to actually show your qualities in a way which it's far easier. Everybody can do well when the wind's in their sails, right? But yeah, what you've described is actually, I think, the most important quality in pretty well any industry.
Yeah, I think learning how to love being in the fire, and it's not, you don't fully love it, but it's more just embracing it, understanding that, and kind of a motto or a saying that has become central to my life is, it is what it is. And just dealing with it, and you will look back, and I know everybody hears this shit and they say yeah, but it's true. You will look back on these big, pivotal, challenging moments in your life, and look back with not regret, not with pain, but with satisfaction for them happening, and trying to kind of have that satisfaction while in the moment is a tough skill to develop, but if you can, it's incredibly helpful.
For sure. And it is definitely a trainable skill for anybody, who's thinking, oh, well, great. Of course we want that mindset, but how do we get it? It is for sure a trainable skill. So Yeah, that's a great point, Rory, because it is probably, as I say, the most foundational skill in
and it comes down to
whatever.
the most basic human psychology or physiology, which is fight or flight, right? When there's a challenge,
Yeah.
it's you can either just collapse and die or fight. So I think like preparing yourself and trying to take a little step back and one like mental hack that that has helped me is trying to think about how does the Rory in 12 months from now, how would he want current Rory to approach this problem? Like looking back, how would you like to look back and be proud of your efforts? That's something that can kind of take you out of the moment and allow you some kind of neutrality when kind of working through these.
Yeah, absolutely. You're your own coach in that moment, and you're just having that sense of distance and perspective. And you're sometimes it's not about being completely present. It is about stepping back and having that clarity. So I absolutely love that. It's a great mindset. So thank you for that, Rory. And I hope everybody listening to this really takes that on board. And if you don't feel you've got that mindset already, reach out and look to find ways to do it. So Rory, I just want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts so generously. And thank you also for what you've brought to us all in terms of entertainment. We haven't even talked about your prop bets. Also, in terms of what you bring to us in terms of, the software, which I think have been, huge value additions to what's available to us out there. Somebody has to create that for us to have that value. So thank you so much. And thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome. Cheers, Stephen.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So I want to thank Rory for being so generous with his time and his thoughts. And thank you for listening and watching. I'm looking forward to sharing more knowledge with the best poker minds out there in the next podcast. So hit the subscribe button, and I look forward to you joining me for the next episode. Thank you again.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast. To get future episodes delivered to you automatically, make sure to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting service. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.